Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am doing day 6 of the 12 Days of Stitchmas calendar. So if you don't want to see what's in this calendar on day 6, then I suggest you save this video to watch when you do want to see it. I'm going to take the stitching die out of here that is in the calendar and I'm going to create a project with it. And it's an adorable little penguin calendar, or stitching die, and it has 2 little snowflake dies to go with it. So with this one, you have 2 different options over his head. You can put some earmuffs on there, or you can put a toque on there. And I absolutely love the fact that you have 2 different options. Those are the 2 snowflake dies, or the 2 snowflakes, and I love that they have that as well. The stitching die for this penguin is his little belly. So I am going to, my original thought, or what I first wanted to do was to stitch him in white, but I've done a lot of stitching in white for the last several days. So I'm going to do a background for this card with waterfall cardstock, and there's a floss in the add-on kit that matches that. So I'm going to use that for doing the stitching on his belly. Off screen, I embossed a background of the waterfall cardstock with a snowflake embossing folder. And to make those snowflakes pop just a little bit more, I'm taking a white pigment ink pad and I'm using a brayer and just rubbing that ink over the raised surface. Now, this is not a really deeply embossed background, so some of it is going to go on the background of the card, but it's okay. It's a wintry background, so it's going to be just fine. So I take my floss and I'm going to put it through the background, or the stitching part of the die, take some Best Ever craft tape and tape that thread down. I'm also putting a little bit of that tape behind the little eye and cheek pieces. Now you can take those pieces out and put colored cardstock behind there, and that's what I've done in the past, but I thought for this one I would take a marker and just color those pieces. The stitching for this one, once again, is very, very simple, and you can get as creative as you want with the stitching or with the different colors that you're using. So this is the light color of one of the flosses in the add-on kit. There's also a darker shade of this, and I'm going to use that darker shade to make the toque for the penguin, but I didn't want his belly to be too dark or too bright, so I chose the lighter of the 2 shades. Now, at one point, I thought I was going to run out of floss, and I ended up cutting the perfect exact amount. I had absolutely nothing left to spare, but I was able to get all of the stitching done. And you can see how quickly that stitching comes together. For my cardstock, I used white for the belly, black for the penguin, as well as his little fins. I have some persimmon, a scrap that I had in my stash that I used for his little feet and his beak. Then the waterfall cardstock I'm going to use for the background that is embossed, or I already used it for the background that's embossed. And the color for his toque is teal topaz. The only other cardstock that I added was some white glitter cardstock, and I'm doing the trim on the toque as well as the little pom-pom with that glitter cardstock. So I have 2 Copic markers here that I'm using to color in those areas of his face. I'd have a black one and I have R11. You can use whatever markers you want on there, or you can take those pieces out and just glue a piece of colored cardstock. It's a great way to use up some scraps and really easy just to fill in those holes. I just wanted to show you a different alternative. Now that that stitching is done and his face is done, I can glue the white part to the black base. And there's a little outline that gets indented when you do the die cutting, so you know exactly where to put those pieces. Now I'm going to add the pom-pom and the trim to his little hat, and I will let that dry. I'm just putting an acrylic block over top of it while it's drying, so it's just going to hold everything nice and flat, free up my hands to work on the next step, and it also means I don't have to hold anything to dry. I think this penguin would also be adorable paired with the snowman from day 1 to create a wintry scene with more than one character, but I absolutely love him just the way he is. For the little beak, I'm just using my reverse tweezers to hold that piece while I put the glue on there, and then I'm going to put it down. By holding it with some tweezers, I don't have to get glue on my fingers, and I can actually see where I'm putting it. I have Barely Art glue that I'm using to glue everything together, and I have it in a nice fine bottle. So I can use it for assembling little pieces like this, and I can also use it for assembling my card. You can see how quick and easy this penguin is to put together. I love the fact that the dies in this calendar are nice and easy to put together. They're a great way to just pause and get some little bit of creative time in a busy season, but you still can create something adorable and cute. And even this penguin, I think you could use him throughout the year. You could just not use the toque, or you could change it up if you wanted to create something a little bit different, but then you would get a little bit more use out of him as well. For the snow at the bottom of the card, I just took a piece of cardstock that was the same width as that waterfall cardstock, which is 4 inches by, the waterfall cardstock is 4 inches by 5 1/4. That white cardstock is 4 inches. I cut a little hill, flipped that piece over and cut a little taller hill to go behind it. When I glue it down, I glue that back hill just a little bit raised, and then I put my front one down below it to cover that bottom edge to make sure that it's nice and straight. For my snowflakes, I just cut them out of scrap white cardstock. I'm going to glue them sporadically on that background amongst the snowflakes that are on my embossed background. And I love the look of those die cut snowflakes with the texture of that embossed background. It gives it so much more depth and detail, and I think it looks a lot more interesting. Now, most of these snowflakes I glued down whole. The last one, I'm just going to cut them in half, and I'm going to put one on the right side going off of the blue piece, and then I'm going to put one on the left side. So often when you have continuous patterns that go off of the edge of the cardstock, it just looks a little bit more realistic. And so I thought I'd get that look here by just cutting a snowflake in half. So just because you have a die cut that is a full piece doesn't mean you can't cut it down to create a particular look. Now I've got most of my card down. I'm going to use the aquamarine gems that come in the add-on kit. I'm going to put the tiny ones in the center of those snowflake die cuts. I'm also going to put a little bit larger ones in the center of some of those bigger snowflakes that are on my embossed background. It's just going to add a little bit of extra sparkle, and the color matches beautifully with that waterfall cardstock that I have in the back, as well as the teal topaz cardstock I have for his little hat. For putting those gems on, I like to use a die pick, just kind of pierce into the adhesive on the back of them. I place it where I want it to go, and then I use my other hand to press it down to make sure that it has some good contact with the cardstock below. After putting those gems down, my last step for this card is I'm going to take some stickles, which is a glitter glue with a fine tip, and I'm just going to put a little thin line on the top of the snow hill. It's just going to add a little bit more sparkle, and I love the fact, or love the look of it when I'm creating winter cards, just to add that little bit of sparkle. After doing that, I decided to take that stickles and just put a dot in the little kind of starry snowflakes that were in my background. It's just going to add to that texture, but it's going to be very subtle because the stickles is transparent with a little bit of opalescent shine with the glitter. So it's just going to add to that background. It's going to tie into the snow. So here is our card for day 6. I hope this gave you a little bit of inspiration on what to use that little penguin stitching die for. I think he's absolutely adorable and perfect for a winter card. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow to see what we have in day 7.